Ferrari blasts the FIA after Hamilton's penalty, Lando gets boos for the championship, and McLaren makes new statement for the remaining races. What happens when Formula One's most controversial penalty decisions collide with championship dreams? The Mexican Grand Prix just delivered one of the season's most debated moments, and Ferrari is absolutely furious about how the stewards handled Lewis Hamilton's punishment. Picture this. Hamilton lines up third on the grid at Mexico City, his best qualifying position of the season. He's hungry for that elusive first Ferrari podium after 20 races of heartbreak. The stage is perfectly set for redemption. But sometimes in Formula One, the racing gods have other plans. The drama unfolds on lap 6 when Hamilton and Max Verstappen go wheel to wheel in classic fashion. These two titans have been battling each other for years, and their rivalry reignited in spectacular fashion on the high-altitude streets of Mexico City. Both drivers pushed the absolute limits, running wide at turn 4 in a heart-stopping moment that had fans jumping out of their seats. But here's where the controversy explodes. While Verstappen escaped any punishment for his aggressive defending, Hamilton received a devastating 10-second penalty that would completely destroy his race. The British driver was forced to serve this penalty during his pit stop, sitting motionless for 10 agonizing seconds while his championship hopes evaporated before his eyes. Ferrari team principal Fred Vasseur didn't hold back his frustration with the steward's decision. He called the penalty management completely unfair, pointing out the glaring inconsistency in how similar incidents were treated throughout the race. Vasseur's anger was palpable as he questioned why Hamilton received such harsh treatment, while Verstappen's equally questionable moves went unpunished. The penalty cost Hamilton dearly. Instead of fighting for 4th place, he plummeted to 8th position, finishing a crushing 25 seconds away from the podium. This extended his unwanted record as a Ferrari driver to 20 consecutive races, without standing on the top 3 steps. No new Ferrari driver in history has endured such a lengthy podium drought. What makes this situation even more frustrating for Ferrari is the stewards' reasoning. They claimed Hamilton gained a lasting advantage by cutting the corner and failing to give the position back to Verstappen. But Hamilton argued that Verstappen's aggressive defending forced him wide in the first place, creating an impossible situation where avoiding contact meant leaving the racing line. The technical explanation reveals the complexity of modern Formula One stewarding. Hamilton locked his brakes under pressure from Verstappen, ran wide at turn 4, and used the grass runoff area while rejoining toward turn 5. The stewards noted that because Hamilton couldn't follow the prescribed yellow line route due to excessive speed, he technically didn't breach the race director's notes. However, they still penalized him for gaining a lasting advantage. This creates a fascinating paradox in Formula One regulations. Hamilton was simultaneously cleared of one violation while being punished for another aspect of the same incident. The stewards applied what they called the standard penalty for leaving the track and gaining a lasting advantage. But Ferrari questions whether this standard should apply uniformly, regardless of context. Vasseur's frustration extends beyond just this single incident. He pointed out that Verstappen had cut corners multiple times during the race, including at turn 1 on the opening lap and earlier in the sequence that led to Hamilton's penalty. The inconsistent application of penalties throughout the race highlighted what Ferrari sees as fundamental problems with current stewarding procedures. The Ferrari boss made a pointed comment about not wanting to be a football coach who complains about everyone, but he couldn't hide his belief that Hamilton's penalty was disproportionately harsh. 10-second penalties are relatively rare in Formula One, typically reserved for more serious infractions that clearly disadvantage other competitors or create dangerous situations. Hamilton's radio reaction captured the raw emotion of the moment. His expletive-filled response reflected not just frustration with this specific penalty, but the accumulated disappointment of 20 races without a Ferrari podium. The 7-time world champion came to Ferrari with dreams of adding to his legacy, but the season has been filled with missed opportunities and questionable strategic decisions. The broader implications of this incident extend beyond just one race result. Formula One's penalty system has faced increasing scrutiny for inconsistent application and harsh punishments that can completely alter championship outcomes. When similar incidents receive vastly different treatments within the same race, it raises questions about the fairness and reliability of current stewarding procedures. Looking at the bigger picture, Hamilton's Ferrari journey has become one of the season's most compelling storylines. His struggle to adapt to the new car, combined with strategic missteps and now controversial penalties, has created a narrative of unfulfilled potential. Every race without a podium adds pressure and raises questions about whether this partnership can deliver the success both parties desperately want. The Mexican Grand Prix penalty controversy won't be quickly forgotten. It represents everything frustrating about modern Formula One's relationship with rule enforcement and competitive fairness. As the season continues, Ferrari and Hamilton will undoubtedly use this incident as motivation to prove their championship credentials. Sometimes the greatest victories come after the most controversial defeats, and this penalty might just be the catalyst Hamilton needs to finally break his Ferrari podium drought. What if I told you Ferrari just made a communication blunder that could have cost Lewis Hamilton even more than just 10 seconds? This isn't just about a penalty, folks. This is about how one misleading radio message exposed a fundamental problem in Formula One that nobody wants to talk about. Picture this. You're Lewis Hamilton, 7-time world champion, racing wheel-to-wheel with Max Verstappen at the Mexican Grand Prix. You're pushing your Ferrari to the absolute limit when suddenly your brakes lock up, you slide off track, and before you know it, you're cutting across the grass to rejoin the circuit. Then your race engineer comes on the radio with news that makes your blood boil. But here's where this story gets really interesting, and why it matters way beyond just one race result. During the Mexico City Grand Prix, Hamilton found himself in a fierce battle with Verstappen on lap 6. As they approached turn 4, Hamilton was holding his own until disaster struck. His brakes locked up on the notoriously slippery Mexican circuit, sending him careening off the racing line and into the runoff area. Now, when you're traveling at those speeds, on a surface that Hamilton himself described as having grip levels lower than anything imaginable, physics takes over. He had no choice but to cut through the grass and rejoin the track ahead of Verstappen. The stewards saw this, reviewed the incident, and handed down a 10-second penalty. But here's where Ferrari dropped the ball completely. Race engineer Riccardo Adami came on the radio and told Hamilton, "We have 10-second penalty for the incident at turn 4 with Verstappen. We don't agree. That's it." No explanation of why the penalty was given, no context about what the stewards actually decided, just a vague message that left Hamilton thinking he was being penalized for racing hard with Verstappen. The reality was completely different. The stewards had actually looked at whether Hamilton failed to follow the race director's instructions about the proper rejoin route, but they cleared him of that charge. They understood that his excess speed made it physically impossible to follow the prescribed yellow line back onto the track. Instead, they penalized him for gaining a lasting advantage by cutting the corner and overtaking Verstappen without giving the position back. This miscommunication had serious consequences. Hamilton was left confused and frustrated, thinking he was being punished for what he considered normal racing contact. His post-race comments proved this misunderstanding persisted long after the checkered flag, as he focused on the wheel-to-wheel battle rather than understanding the real reason for his penalty. Sky Sports commentator and former Formula One driver Karun Chandhok didn't hold back in his criticism. He called Ferrari's communication poor and not actually true, pointing out that they had unnecessarily frustrated their driver without giving him the complete picture. This wasn't just about hurt feelings. It was about Ferrari failing to properly support their driver when clear communication could have made all the difference. Think about what this really means. In a sport where milliseconds matter and every decision can impact championship points, teams are still failing at basic communication. Hamilton wasn't just dealing with a penalty, he was dealing with the mental frustration of not understanding why he was being penalized in the first place. The consequences extended beyond just Hamilton's emotional state. Chandhok raised an excellent point about Ferrari's strategic failure. Why didn't they instruct Hamilton to slow down immediately after the incident to give back the position to Verstappen? This could have potentially avoided the penalty altogether, as stewards often look favorably on drivers who voluntarily correct their advantage. Instead, Ferrari let Hamilton continue racing with the gained position for several laps before the penalty was officially announced. By then, it was too late to take any corrective action. Hamilton served his 10-second penalty during his pit stop on lap 23, dropping from 3rd place all the way down to 14th before fighting back to finish 8th. This incident reveals a broader problem in Formula One that goes far beyond just Ferrari. Teams are managing incredibly complex technical operations while trying to communicate effectively with drivers who are operating in high-stress, high-speed environments. The margin for error in these communications is essentially zero. Yet we continue to see these fundamental breakdowns. What makes this even more frustrating is that this isn't Hamilton's first rodeo. He's been in Formula One for nearly 2 decades and has experienced every possible racing scenario. If anyone deserves clear, accurate information from their team, it's a driver of his caliber and experience. The steward's official explanation was crystal clear in their post-race summary. They noted that Hamilton locked his brakes, left the track at turn 4, and used the grass area while rejoining. They explicitly stated that because he couldn't follow the prescribed route due to excess speed, no breach of the race director's notes occurred. However, by cutting the corner and gaining a lasting advantage over Verstappen, he deserved the standard penalty for such infractions. This clarity from the stewards makes Ferrari's vague radio message even more inexcusable. They had access to the same information, yet they chose to present it in a way that obscured rather than clarified what actually happened. Looking at the bigger picture, this communication failure represents everything wrong with how some Formula One teams handle crisis management. Instead of providing their driver with accurate information that could help him understand and accept the penalty, they fed him incomplete details that only amplified his frustration. The Mexican Grand Prix was already challenging enough for Hamilton, who was hoping to score his first podium for Ferrari. Instead, he found himself dealing with unnecessary confusion on top of the legitimate disappointment of the penalty itself. Moving forward, this incident should serve as a wake-up call for Ferrari and other teams about the critical importance of clear, accurate communication. In a sport where the difference between winning and losing often comes down to the smallest details, getting the basics wrong is simply unacceptable. For Hamilton, this experience adds another layer of complexity to his transition to Ferrari, highlighting just how crucial effective communication will be for his success with his new team in the seasons ahead. The Formula One championship battle has taken a dramatic turn, and what we're witnessing might be one of the most fascinating psychological chess matches in racing history. With just 4 race weekends remaining, Max Verstappen sits 36 points behind championship leader Lando Norris, but Red Bull's Helmut Marko is practically grinning from ear to ear. Why? Because he believes McLaren's commitment to fairness might just hand Verstappen his 5th consecutive world title. Let me paint you the picture of how we got here. After the Dutch Grand Prix, Verstappen looked completely out of contention. He was trailing by a massive 104 points, and many wrote off his championship hopes entirely. Fast forward through 5 intense race weekends, and the 3-time world champion has clawed back almost 70 points. That's not just impressive driving, that's championship-caliber resilience under pressure. The turning point came when McLaren made a decision that seemed noble on paper, but potentially costly in practice. When Oscar Piastri was leading the championship standings, the team refused to implement team orders favoring him over Norris. This allowed the British driver to take crucial points away from his teammate, creating an internal battle that ultimately benefited their biggest rival. Sunday's Mexican Grand Prix perfectly illustrated this dynamic. Norris claimed victory and took the championship lead by a single point over Piastri. But here's the twist that has Marko so confident. While Verstappen did lose points to Norris for the first time in 5 races, he actually gained ground in the overall championship fight by finishing ahead of Piastri. It's like watching someone lose a battle while simultaneously winning the war. Marko's confidence stems from a simple strategic reality. Red Bull operates with laser focus on maximizing Verstappen's championship chances. Every decision, every pit strategy, every resource allocation centers around their star driver. Meanwhile, McLaren continues to split their attention and resources between 2 legitimate title contenders. As Marko put it, they hope McLaren will stick to their fairness approach because Red Bull has the advantage of everything being focused on one driver. This creates a fascinating psychological dimension to the championship fight. Verstappen faces one primary rival, the McLaren team as a whole. But Norris and Piastri each face 2 competitors, Verstappen and their own teammate. The mental load of fighting on 2 fronts simultaneously cannot be understated, especially when championship pressure reaches its peak. The pressure question becomes even more intriguing when we consider Norris's recent history. Former Formula One driver Timo Glock raised a crucial point about whether the British driver can handle the intensity of leading a championship fight. Norris has now overturned a 34-point deficit to his teammate, but the real test comes when the helmet goes on and the championship pressure reaches maximum intensity. Glock questioned whether Norris truly understands why he struggled under pressure previously and if he's developed the mental tools to cope differently this time. The difference between theoretical preparation and actual race day execution under championship pressure is enormous. Standing in the paddock discussing pressure is entirely different from experiencing it at 300 kilometers per hour with millions watching and history on the line. What makes this situation even more compelling is McLaren's insistence that their approach isn't favoritism, but rather circumstantial. Team principal Andrea Stella maintains that Piastri's recent struggles relate to track conditions rather than team strategy. The Australian apparently struggles with the car's handling when track temperatures rise and the vehicle becomes unstable. Stella believes the remaining circuits will prove this theory, showing that track characteristics, not team bias, explain the performance differences. This sets up a potentially explosive Final Four races. With 116 points still available and 3 drivers separated by just 36 points, a single mechanical failure, crash, or moment of poor judgment could completely reshape the championship landscape. The margins are so tight that one DNF could eliminate a contender entirely. The strategic implications extend beyond just the drivers. Red Bull's complete organizational alignment behind Verstappen means they would even consider extreme measures like giving him Yuki Tsunoda's car if mechanical issues threaten their championship hopes. This level of commitment and flexibility gives Verstappen a significant operational advantage. Meanwhile, McLaren's fairness policy, while admirable from a sporting perspective, creates internal competition that could prove costly. Each McLaren driver must not only outperform Verstappen, but also their teammate, splitting focus and potentially creating strategic complications during crucial moments. The psychological warfare aspect cannot be ignored either. Verstappen knows he has unwavering team support, allowing him to drive with complete confidence that every strategic decision will favor his championship chances. This mental freedom is invaluable when racing at the absolute limit. Conversely, both McLaren drivers must navigate the complex dynamics of competing against each other while trying to prevent Verstappen from capitalizing on any internal conflicts. The mental energy required to manage this dual competition could prove decisive in high-pressure situations. Looking ahead, the championship fight promises to deliver incredible drama. 3 elite drivers, separated by the narrowest of margins, battling across 4 diverse circuits with completely different strategic approaches. Verstappen fights with singular focus and total team support. Norris and Piastri fight each other, while simultaneously trying to deny their rival his 5th consecutive title. The mathematics remain fascinating too. While 36 points seems significant, it represents just 1.5 race victories worth of points. In a sport where fortunes can change in milliseconds, this gap is essentially nothing. One perfectly executed weekend by any contender could swing the entire championship. This championship battle represents more than just individual rivalry. It's a clash between 2 fundamentally different philosophical approaches to team management and championship pursuit. What if I told you that one comment from 2021 is now coming back to haunt Formula One teams in 2025? And it perfectly explains why Max Verstappen just pulled off one of the most dramatic championship comebacks we've ever seen? Right now, we're witnessing history repeat itself in Formula One, and most fans don't even realize it. While McLaren sits pretty with their Constructors' Championship already secured, they've made a decision that could define the next era of Formula One. But Red Bull? They're playing a completely different game, and they're using lessons from 4 years ago to expose a massive flaw in their rival's strategy. Let me take you back to late 2021. Mercedes boss Toto Wolff was watching Red Bull continue developing their car late into the season, and he made a prediction that would come back to bite him. Wolff believed that Red Bull's focus on 2021 updates would hurt them when the new ground effect cars arrived in 2022. He was essentially saying that you can't win today and tomorrow at the same time. Well, we all know how that story ended. Red Bull didn't just survive the transition to 2022, they dominated it, winning both championships in the first 2 years of the new regulations. They proved that experience, expertise, and smart resource management can overcome the supposed disadvantage of late-season development. Fast forward to today, and we're seeing an almost identical scenario playing out. McLaren has already won the Constructors' Championship and holds the top 2 spots in the drivers' standings with Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri. Their technical department has made a bold decision. They've completely stopped developing the current car to focus entirely on 2026, when Formula One introduces revolutionary new technical regulations featuring smaller, lighter, more agile cars with active aerodynamics. McLaren team principal Andrea Stella justified this decision by saying their 2026 project would be heavily compromised if they continued current development. He believes that to win future championships, you need to sacrifice present opportunities. It's a logical argument on paper, but there's just one problem. Max Verstappen doesn't care about their logic. While McLaren was making spreadsheets and projections, Verstappen was making moves. In just 5 races, he's turned a 40-point deficit into a 36-point lead. That's almost 70 points gained, while his main rivals essentially gave up on improving their car. Think about that for a moment. McLaren handed Verstappen a massive advantage by essentially forfeiting their development war. But here's where it gets really interesting. Red Bull Motorsport advisor Helmut Marko didn't just continue developing, he started laughing at McLaren's strategy. When asked about McLaren's approach, Marko couldn't help but chuckle and remind everyone about 2021. His message was clear. We've been here before. We know exactly what we're doing, and history is about to repeat itself. Red Bull brought 4 new parts to Mexico, including a revised floor, while McLaren brought nothing. Sure, Red Bull struggled in Mexico, as they always do at high altitude, but Verstappen still finished on the podium and crucially ahead of Oscar Piastri. Every point matters when you're orchestrating a championship comeback this dramatic. Marko revealed that Red Bull's philosophy is simple. Whenever regulations change, they work as long as possible to stay competitive. This isn't gambling or desperation. It's calculated strategy based on 3 successful regulation changes. They have an exact plan, disciplined people, and most importantly, they have institutional knowledge of how to manage transitions. But McLaren's decision becomes even more questionable when you consider what Red Bull is actually juggling. Not only are they continuing current car development, but they're also preparing for 2026's technical revolution and developing their first Formula One engine in collaboration with Ford. If anyone should be overwhelmed by competing priorities, it should be Red Bull. Yet they're the ones gaining ground, while McLaren watches from the sidelines. The irony is that McLaren's technical director essentially admitted that Red Bull's approach makes sense for teams with specific problems to solve. He suggested that Red Bull might be happier to sacrifice some 2026 performance because they have other issues. But this completely misses the point. Red Bull isn't sacrificing anything. They're proving that elite organizations can execute multiple complex projects simultaneously. What makes this even more dramatic is the timing. We're not just talking about any season. We're talking about a season where Verstappen was written off by many experts. After struggling through the middle part of the year, falling 40 points behind, most people assumed the championship was over. McLaren certainly seemed to think so, which is why they felt comfortable stopping development. But champions don't think like everyone else. While McLaren was planning for tomorrow, Verstappen was seizing today. While they were making excuses about resource allocation, he was making history on track. This is why he's a 3-time world champion and why Red Bull has become the benchmark in Formula One. The 2026 regulations will indeed bring massive changes, new engines, active aerodynamics, completely different car concepts. But if 2021 taught us anything, it's that the teams who stay aggressive and keep pushing boundaries are the ones who adapt fastest to new challenges. Red Bull isn't just developing parts. They're developing winning mentality, operational excellence, and championship instincts that will serve them well regardless of what the regulations look like. As we head into the final races of 2025, McLaren might have their Constructors' Trophy, but they've handed Red Bull something far more valuable: momentum, confidence, and a masterclass in how champions think differently. The question isn't whether McLaren made the right call for 2026. The question is whether they just helped create their own nightmare for years to come. Sometimes the biggest risk isn't taking risks at all. It's assuming you can predict the future while forgetting to win today. Formula One fans, buckle up, because we need to talk about the elephant in the paddock that nobody wants to address. Right now, McLaren finds themselves in the most uncomfortable position any F1 team could imagine, and the conspiracy theories swirling around social media are getting absolutely wild. Picture this scenario. You're running a championship contending team with 2 incredible drivers separated by just 1 point in the standings. Every decision you make gets scrutinized under a microscope. Every strategic call becomes ammunition for conspiracy theorists. And no matter what happens, half the fan base thinks you're playing favorites. Welcome to McLaren's nightmare in 2025. The drama reached fever pitch after the Mexican Grand Prix, where Lando Norris delivered a masterclass performance, winning from lights to flag, while his teammate Oscar Piastri struggled to 5th place. That 15-point swing flipped the championship lead from the Australian to the Brit, and suddenly social media exploded with accusations that McLaren was deliberately sabotaging Piastri to help Norris claim his first world title. Let's dive into what really happened in Mexico City, because the truth is far more nuanced than the conspiracy theories suggest. The Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez presented unique challenges with hot, slippery track conditions that exposed fundamental differences in driving styles between the two McLaren pilots. While Norris thrived in these sliding, low-grip conditions, Piastri found himself 6/10ths off the pace in qualifying alone. Andrea Stella, McLaren's team principal, provided fascinating insights into these performance gaps. He explained that Norris excels when dealing with hot tarmac and sliding tires, essentially dancing with an unpredictable car and extracting pace from chaos. Piastri, conversely, performs at his peak in high-grip scenarios, where he can exploit his incredible natural talent through precision and control, rather than adaptation to sliding conditions. This isn't the first time we've seen this pattern emerge. Austin showed similar characteristics, with Piastri falling 3/10ths behind his teammate in qualifying under comparable hot and slippery conditions. The conspiracy theorists pointed to these gaps as evidence of team manipulation, but the data tells a different story about driving style compatibility with specific track conditions. What makes this situation even more intriguing is McLaren's response to the growing controversy. Rather than getting defensive or trying to silence critics, they've doubled down on transparency and provided detailed explanations for the performance differences. Stella revealed how the team worked extensively with Piastri between qualifying and race day in Mexico, analyzing data, reviewing video footage, and identifying specific techniques needed to handle the sliding car effectively. The overnight coaching sessions paid dividends during the race itself. Despite getting trapped in traffic for most of the Mexican Grand Prix, Piastri showed significantly improved pace compared to his qualifying struggles. He successfully implemented the lessons learned about managing a car that slides extensively while still producing competitive lap times, demonstrating the kind of adaptability that separates good drivers from championship contenders. Looking ahead to the final 4 races of the season, Stella believes the playing field will level out considerably. Las Vegas historically challenged McLaren as a team, presenting different characteristics that could favor either driver depending on conditions. The remaining circuits don't inherently advantage one driving style over another, potentially setting up an epic finale between 2 evenly matched teammates. The psychological pressure on McLaren continues mounting with each passing race. CEO Zak Brown previously stated he would rather lose the championship than compromise the team's commitment to fairness between drivers. But maintaining that principle becomes increasingly difficult when every decision gets dissected by millions of passionate fans looking for hidden agendas. This situation highlights a broader issue plaguing modern Formula One: the polarization of fan perspectives and the tendency to attribute performance differences to conspiracy rather than legitimate technical or circumstantial factors. Social media amplifies these theories, creating echo chambers where speculation becomes accepted fact and nuanced explanations get drowned out by sensational accusations. The irony is that McLaren's predicament stems from success rather than failure. Having 2 drivers capable of fighting for the championship should be celebrated, yet instead it's created an impossible balancing act where any outcome will be questioned by skeptics. When Norris performs well, critics claim favoritism. When Piastri succeeds, they point to guilt-driven compensation for previous alleged sabotage. What's particularly fascinating is how this championship battle reflects the evolution of modern F1 teams. Unlike the clear number 1 and number 2 driver hierarchies of previous eras, McLaren has committed to genuine equality between their pilots. This approach requires unprecedented diplomatic skills and transparent communication to maintain credibility with fans, media, and the drivers themselves. The technical aspects of this rivalry also deserve recognition. Both drivers bring unique strengths to the table, and their contrasting approaches to racecraft create opportunities for McLaren to develop a more versatile car setup philosophy. The lessons learned from managing these different driving styles could provide long-term competitive advantages beyond this championship fight. As we approach the season finale, the narrative surrounding McLaren's championship battle will likely intensify rather than diminish. Every pit stop, strategy call, and setup choice will be analyzed for signs of bias. The team's greatest challenge isn't managing the drivers or optimizing the car's performance. It's navigating the court of public opinion in an era where conspiracy theories spread faster than factual analysis. Ultimately, this championship fight represents everything beautiful and frustrating about Formula One. The purity of competition gets clouded by politics. Genuine technical explanations get overshadowed by sensational theories, and the sport's complexity creates endless opportunities for misinterpretation. McLaren's handling of this situation will define not just their 2025 campaign, but their reputation for years to come.